Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. My name is Nate. I also go by Hockey Boy Nate, and today we are going to be giving an update as to the potential tornado outbreak. Yes, I said tornado outbreak that could be impacting the Deep South. But before we get started, I'd like to take the time to ask you all to do me a favor. Hit that like button down below, subscribe if you're new, turn on notifications so that you're up to date with all my videos and live streams. Yes, I do live streams for events like this one. I most likely will be live streaming on Wednesday, so if you want to tune in for that, turn on notifications. And share this with friends and family on social media. That would be absolutely great. I would greatly appreciate it. And yeah, let's get on with the video. So let's take a look at the Storm Prediction Center here. You can see that for day one today, which is Tuesday, March 16th, you can see there has been a slight risk that has been issued for the Central Plains areas, the central parts of Kansas down into much of Oklahoma, down into the south central parts of Texas. This will be mainly for hail around an inch, maybe a little bit larger, but you do have a 15% chance of hail over 1 inch in those areas. And then you have a 5% that extends all the way into the Dixie Alley Deep South region. So that's something to keep in mind, that today might be the calm before the storm with these thunderstorms across the board. Wind, it's the same exact thing, a 15% for where the hail was, so 15% chance of you seeing gusty winds over 58 miles per hour, and then the 5% extends all the way down into Dixie Alley as well. Tornadoes, there is a little bit of a 5% right around Oklahoma City and Norman, so the low pressure system will kind of gradually move across, and there seems to be a little bit of a triple point action, which a triple point is basically where all the conditions are very favorable and they all kind of meet at a specific point. So you have your warm front that goes across like this, you have your cold front that comes down like this, and so when you have a low pressure system that sits in right here, you have typically a lot of wind shear that forms right around the low pressure system. You have your maximum forcing, which comes from the cold front to actually be able to push the thunderstorms and make them initiate and move on through. And your warm front obviously gets all your moisture and brings it in from the Gulf. So right where all those areas meet is where a 5% chance for tornadoes has been designated for today. Now let's get into the main risk of it, because this is the main reason why all of you are here. Tomorrow, Wednesday, March 17th, this right here is a moderate risk. And for those of you who are new to the channel, we had a moderate risk on Saturday, and we have another one here today. This is 4 to 5 days away from each other, and this is pretty rare to have in March. The fact that we have two moderate risks is very, 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 very interesting in regards to how this severe weather season could get started relatively quickly. It could ramp up relatively quickly too, but moderate risk that includes Arkansas down into the southwestern parts of Tennessee, to the northern parts of Mississippi, and the northwestern to the central parts of Alabama. Enhanced risk is just basically southern parts of Missouri down into central parts of Arkansas, the northeastern parts of Louisiana, to the south central parts of Missouri, the southern parts of Alabama. Not exactly in the Mobile, Alabama areas, but it does also include a little bit of the panhandle north of Pensacola, Florida. So that's something to keep in mind too. Slight risk is for a little bit of Kansas, a little bit of Oklahoma, a little bit of Texas, much of Louisiana, the southern parts of Mississippi, the Mobile, Alabama areas, as well as the southeastern parts of Alabama and the northeastern parts of Alabama. and then the Pensacola region, as well as Georgia, and then the marginal extends from central Kansas to oh my goodness, central Missouri to southern Illinois, southern Indiana, into western Kentucky, central Tennessee, central Georgia, all the way down into a little bit of the Panhandle in Florida, southern Louisiana, eastern Texas, and eastern Oklahoma. So large area for thunderstorms to potentially be severe and maybe even tornadic, strong tornadic, as what the Storm Prediction Center is mentioning here. Hail, there's a 30% chance for hail over 1 inch or larger. You could also have a 15% chance that extends in the slight risk areas, 5% that extends all the way in the marginal areas, which was that dark green that I showed you all just a second ago. But one thing I do want to mention here is there is this little black circle with squiggly lines in the middle of it, and that indicates a hatched risk. And what that means is if you get a hatched risk, on top of the 30% chance for hail over 1 inch, you also have a 10% chance or greater of you seeing hail over 2 inches. So not only could you not have a 30% chance for just regular severe hail, you could also get damaging hail on top of that. And that is a bit concerning, especially for the areas in northeastern Arkansas, heading into the northwestern parts of Mississippi, western parts of Tennessee, and southern parts of Missouri. The wind is just a 30% chance. So 30% chance of you seeing wind over 58 miles per hour, which extends over most parts of the enhanced risk that I mentioned before. Goes all the way down into Florida, all the way up into Missouri, with a little bit of parts of Arkansas, as well as Louisiana and Mississippi. And then this is the thing that everyone wants to look at the most. This is the reason why this was turned into a moderate risk. And it is because there is a massive risk for tornadoes. I mean, look at this. 2% extends practically an entire chunk of the country. If you were to take this box out and place it anywhere else, you know, it could take up practically like much of a actual region of a country. Well, of the country, I should say. So, you know, your 2% risk extends almost all the way over to South Carolina, but not exactly. So it stays in Georgia, all the way up into Tennessee, Kentucky, Illinois, Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, all the way into Louisiana. And then your 5% risk outlines the 2%. This is where it starts to get concerning, though. Your 10% and 15% chance of tornadoes, all localized from southern Missouri all the way down into Arkansas and Louisiana, down into Mississippi and Tennessee and Alabama. And so your 15% is, oh geez, it just updated on me. That's fun. And then your 15% is also there within that 10%. So if you heard any of your areas in that percentage, just realize you have that probability of a tornado within 25 miles of a point. And then another thing that I wanted to talk about with this outlook is there's that pesky hatched risk again, that black circle with a bunch of dotted lines in the middle. And that could indicate that on top of your 10 and 15% chance for tornadoes, you also have a 10% chance or greater of you seeing strong tornadoes, EF2 or stronger. So people in these areas, I know you sometimes look at the models and, you know, say, oh, these areas aren't going to impact you all. Or, you know, if you think that you're not in the main risk, like the 15% chance, you think, oh, it's not really going to impact us a whole lot. It doesn't matter. I'd just honestly, if you take anything away from this video, it's that you should have a plan by tomorrow morning, just in case if there's anything that goes awry quickly, because that's the type of day that we could have. It's not exactly vibes of 2011. It's a bad comparison to make that, but this could potentially get very dangerous really quickly. And so you need to have a plan of action. I would recommend having helmets and pillows and protective gear on standby. That way, if you do get issued into a tornado warning, you could be able to use that and get into your safe space, like get underground or get into the lowest innermost part of your building, particularly a bathroom or a closet with no windows, so you can put as many walls between yourself and either the tornadic rotation or tornado as possible. So just keep that in mind tomorrow, that you do have a plan of action just in case. You might also want to bring some food and water down in your shelter just in case if you're stuck there. Let's say let's play hypotheticals. Worst case scenario, if your house gets impacted or your building gets impacted by a tornado and you're stuck there, it'd rather be safe than sorry if you're stuck there for say an hour or two and you'd have some water, you have some extra little bit of food, just in case if you aren't rescued immediately. So just keep that in mind, that you could have multiple plans of action going into this event, because this event looks to be serious and we're only 2 days out. So that is something to keep in mind. Day 3 outlook doesn't look a whole lot better, to be completely honest with you, because there's an enhanced risk for the East Coast, and they mentioned the exact same thing what the Storm Prediction Center said the Day 2 outlook. I'll just read that real quickly because I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but allow me to read the text here, the summary text from the Storm Prediction Center. A broad area of substantial severe weather potential, including risk for large hail, damaging winds, and several strong tornadoes, is anticipated Wednesday from the Arkansas, Louisiana vicinity eastward across central Gulf Coast states and southern Appalachians. So if you think I'm making it up, the Storm Protection Center just said the exact same thing that I did. As a matter of fact, these guys are the ones that you should be paying attention to the most, because these guys are going to be telling you all what exactly could be happening. So pay attention to the Storm Prediction Center, pay attention to the National Weather Service, especially as the day gets closer and closer. But the enhanced risk for Thursday extends from the Carolinas all the way down into Georgia, with a slight risk kind of going over the Appalachians down into parts of Florida like Jacksonville and Tallahassee. So that's something to keep in mind as well, that as it continues to get closer and closer, you could have risks like that. And then your marginal extends all the way down into southern Florida, which is not that big of a surprise because Florida gets all sorts of thunderstorms every single day. But regardless, you guys will still have a strong potential of getting strong to severe, maybe even tornadic storms in your vicinity, I should say. Just to reinforce exactly what old narrative said, let's read the summary again. And so severe weather is expected from southern Virginia southward into Florida and westward into portions of eastern Kentucky, eastern Tennessee Thursday, along with the potential for hail and locally damaging winds and several tornadoes. A couple of them possibly could be strong. They are anticipated. That's right there in bold text, bold lettering. How you guys take that is all up to you. But I'm just here to tell you all that there is an event that very well could be happening tomorrow into Thursday. So just keep that in mind. All right, let's take a look at the HRRR. This is a hourly model. I love using this one just so it can give you guys a rough estimation as to when thunderstorms are going to be moving on through. So we're going to take a look at today's 5% risk first. And you can see that here's your low pressure system that I was talking about. Your low pressure system comes around. You have your warm front that brings up all your moisture. You have your cold front that comes down and creates a lot of forcing. So right in this general vicinity is where you can expect to see your tornadic potential, and boom, look at those thunderstorms. Pop, there they are. Right around the Oklahoma City area, maybe just to the west of that. Maybe, yeah, just a little bit to the west. So you still have thunderstorms that develop in and around those areas, and then you have more thunderstorms that develop later on into the overnight areas. This will be, I believe, more of a gusty wind threat and hail threat, but that's still one of those things to where you guys need to probably turn on your weather radios. I would actually highly recommend it. So it'd be right around 3 o'clock is when it'll be reaching the central Oklahoma areas. Actually, thunderstorm initiation happens at midnight, so that's something to keep in mind there, that you could very well have overnight storms in the central daylight time hours. I do want to take a look at the temperature real quickly, just to see what the conditions are like for you guys. So upper 60s into lower 70s. That's not all too bad, honestly. Especially if you have a gusty wind threat and a little bit of hail. Maybe a little bit of a tornado risk, but it doesn't seem to be like all too big, or at least not too big compared to what's going to happen the next day. Dew points, they'll start to surge up a bit. So you can see that warm air just, this is a perfect representation of what a warm front does. So you can see how the warm, moist air starts out in the places like Texas and Louisiana. But you notice how Arkansas and Oklahoma, their dew points are in the 40s and 50s. This is Tuesday morning, all right? This is this morning. And what a warm front does is a warm front pulls this moisture all the way up to the low pressure system. And so you'll see over time that it'll just continue to pull and pull and pull and gradually suck up all of this moisture into these general areas. And you can see here, this is the overnight hours, 1 o'clock. Here's your cold front and dry line that develops and uses all those thunderstorms. Here's your warm front right here. This is your warm front that brought up all that moisture into places like Oklahoma. And so right in this general vicinity is right around where you'd have your tornado risk. So an overnight tornado risk for central Oklahoma. I would try and turn on your alerts on your phone, so like your notifications, or if you have a weather radio, please turn that on as well. I want to take a look at the conditions around there in general. Let's use surface space cape, actually. I'm curious to see. So the general cape numbers are minimal. It's around 1,000 to 1,500 joules per kilogram, which isn't really all too much, but it's not all too little either. You'd want at least over 750 joules per kilogram of cape, which is convective available potential energy. It's the measure of the buoyant force in the atmosphere to where warm, moist air rises. Think of steam. That's what I mean by warm, moist air rises. And cold air sinks. So, cold air sinking. So the displacement between those two characteristics is measured in CAPE, or convective available potential energy. So the more CAPE there is, the stronger the storms typically are, or the longer they can sustain. It honestly depends upon a few other things, but CAPE is known as energy. So general vicinity, 1,500 joules per kilogram. Not all too bad. I do want to take a look and see what the tornado risk is for a little bit. Interesting. So here's a sounding. It's a little bit capped. It's a little bit contaminated. I can't exactly give you all the best sounding here because this event this weekend is going to be... Okay, so this actually isn't too bad. It's a little elevated, but we're going to work with it. So photograph looks nice. If you're new to this and you don't really know what you're looking at, don't freak out. Trust me, it's a whole lot simpler than it actually is. If you would just bear with me for a second. If you imagine yourself in a satellite and you're looking down at the ground with a dude holding a weather balloon, all right? And he lets the weather balloon go. In that satellite, you're going to look down at the ground to see the weather balloon move in all sorts of directions as it goes up higher and higher in the sky. So go up, down, left and right, stuff like that, and you'll be able to see that from the satellite. So what the photograph does is it looks at that weather balloon and it shows us where it's going. So it goes up. Oh, wait, that's a black pen. Give me a second. All right, so it goes up and then it turns to the right and then it does a loop and then it goes backwards and then it goes forward and then it does another loop. And yeah, then it dies. That's the end of the photograph right there. But what we want to look for is this red line right here. And we want to see what it does. So what we're seeing right here is this red line kind of curl off to the right. And what that tells us is that there's a little bit of spin in the atmosphere. If it were to continue to keep turning off to the right, it would eventually come back to where it was originally at. So there is a bit of spin indicated here by this photograph, and this is indeed a tornadic photograph. So this checks off, and the possible hazard type right here, you may not be able to see it, but it says TOR, TOR, or it's short for tornado. So that photograph checks off. We do have the photograph part of it. Next is the convective available potential energy, or CAPE. And if we take a look here, you can see that the CAPE numbers they're all right. They're about to get over 2,000 though, which is going to be even better for thunderstorms to be able to sustain. If you get over 2,000 joules per kilogram, that's when you kind of need to start getting concerned, because then you can consider larger thunderstorms than just think about initiating ones. So it's forecast to be 2,653 joules per kilogram, which is a relatively large amount. Surface CAPE at the moment, or surface-based CAPE, is 1,724, which isn't all too bad either. So it's really not all that bad. Capping inversion is 43, which if you have anything around -10 to -50, that's when you can get explosive thunderstorms. But if you have over than that, then it can kill thunderstorms. So we either hope that this is up really, really high so that it would be a limiting factor and would kill off thunderstorms, or we hope that CAPE is low and that we don't get any major impacts from this. Dew points, which is this green number right here, is 63 degrees Fahrenheit. Temperature is 64. There might be a little bit of cloud cover at the surface there, but something to keep in mind with all of that. That the dew points they're okay. If around 60 is when you can consider thunderstorms, so it's a little bit over that. You can consider that they're very much so could be thunderstorms. Lapse rates, surface to 3 kilometers is pretty bad. It's 6, but but 3 to 6 kilometer, I should say, is a whole lot better. So that's something to keep in mind there. Lapse rates just basically look at updrafts. So the higher the lapse rates, the stronger the updrafts typically will be. So this photograph doesn't look all too well, not photograph, this sounding doesn't look all too bad. It does have its flaws because it is a little bit elevated, but that is still something to keep in mind. All right, let's take a look at tomorrow's event, and we'll go from the timings here. So we'll show you all. There's some general thunderstorms that move on through in the general vicinity here on Tuesday, especially central Alabama, central Mississippi. They're kind of just pretty much all day. I'm not going to lie. It's a very much so all day event for today. So general thunderstorms. And then Wednesday morning, this is where things start to get pretty concerning, because you do have general thunderstorms that actually go through Arkansas in the early morning hours. And then all of a sudden, you get more thunderstorms that develop in Arkansas. And you have kind of this line that protrudes through, and this is where you can see the risk in Arkansas. You can see some scattered supercells that could be able to form some tornadoes in some of these areas. And so you have one wave right here that's coming through Arkansas and Texas and Louisiana that could bring some tornadic situations. But then if we look at it later on in the evening, this is actually in the afternoon hours, you can see right here, look at this. A lot of thunderstorms start to develop across the area. You can see in Mississippi, into Alabama, into Georgia. You still have this line right here that's in Texas and Louisiana, all the way up into Arkansas. So you have threat number 1, which is this line, and threat number 2, which are these scattered thunderstorms that develop in and around the 1 o'clock Central, 2 o'clock Eastern time zones. And that's when people need to start kind of monitoring this event, because as it continues to get closer and closer, especially later on in the day, you can start to see more of this scattered threat for severe storms in your area. And then as it continues to move on through, you can see more supercells develop. They're kind of a bit more consolidated, if you will. and that's when things can start to fire off. So 4 o'clock Central, 5 o'clock Eastern, that's when these thunderstorms can start to really fire off and become supercells, maybe even become very strong supercells. So something to keep in mind there. The line of storms continue to move on through into the evening. You can see how they continue to push off and form a bit more of a gusty wind threat. So this goes into the morning on Thursday. So a nice little line of thunderstorms that continue to push off through, and they'll continue to move into the Georgia areas. And this is actually the end of the HRRR model, but if we continue to look on through with, say, something like the NAM 3K, which is in a higher resolution than its counterpart, the NAM, you can see how thunderstorms continue to kind of push on through into the Thursday hours, where you could still have these line of storms, and then you can have some supercells to develop out in front. You can actually already see one along the Cape Hatteras areas, so it may not look like it right now, but you very well could see a chance for some more supercells out in front of the line on this event. And I most likely will be streaming this event on Thursday as well, so keep that in mind and turn on notifications. All right, let's go back to the HRRR. This will be the final bit. I won't do soundings for Thursday's event. I will do them for tomorrow's event because we are relatively close to that. So let's take a look at the surface base cape, see what our energy is here. Remember, anything over 2000 is when we need to start getting concerned. So if we take a look here at the color code, anything that's yellow is above 2000, or even above yellow, reds, purples, pinks, and stuff like that. We won't get into the purples and pinks, I don't think, but we still have some areas in the red. That's mainly over the Gulf of Mexico, so that's not really a lot to be concerned. But if we continue to move up the sounding here, this is Wednesday morning. Oh, look at that. We've got some reds already. And so there are some larger amounts of CAPE that get up to 3,000 joules per kilogram. So that's something to keep in mind too. Now, if you are a weather nerd like myself, and you know how to do soundings and stuff like that, then I do want to mention something real quickly. After you can see actually the cape starts to fall apart once it gets to the overnight hours, which is a good thing. But I do want to mention one thing in regards to soundings. All right, first off, the significant tornado parameter, if you take a sounding at the worst area, that's just the worst case scenario. All right, it's not going to happen across the board, so that's something to consider as well. But in regards to what I wanted to talk about, oh, this is a pretty good sounding here. Except for the hodograph. Hodograph's kind of wonky a little bit. It does veer off to the right. You can see that clearly. You have large amounts of CAPE, 3,000 joules per kilogram. Your dew points are in the 70s. That's pretty crazy. Hold up. 70-degree dew points? I thought they were lower 60s. Look at that, chat. Dew points actually get up into the 70s in some spots. That's where people need to be concerned, because this actually gets 10 degrees above what you actually need for thunderstorms. So once the dew points gets into the 70s, that's when people need to be concerned about severe storms, because that's when you have so much moisture in the sky to the point where it's just, you know, it's overpowering. And that's the reason why we have so much CAPE, is because the dew points are actually up in those up in that vicinity into the 70s. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Anyways, back to the point that I was trying to make. If I try and find a sounding here in the central part of the event, so right about here, probably will be contaminated, but that's okay. Okay, that's fine. So one thing I did want to mention is that if you take a look at the past model runs, you'll see from 0 to 1 kilometers, there is less and less cloud cover that's starting to kind of unfold here. The dew point line and the temperature line isn't really touching as much. It's starting to kind of separate a little bit, which means that if that continues to trend like that, you could get higher amounts of CAPE in those vicinities. So that's something that we're going to continue to have to watch for, a rise in the amounts of CAPE, because if there's less clouds, you get to have daytime heating, which will be able to kind of create more CAPE. Seems how the warm air loves to rise, the cold air likes to sink, yada yada. So that's just something to keep in mind too. This photograph isn't too bad as well. It's just the 1 to 2 kilometer and 2 to 3 kilometers kind of meh. So that's something to keep in mind. Anyways, that's going to be it for me, guys. If you guys did enjoy the video, please be sure to like it. Subscribe if you are new, and turn on notifications so that you can be up to date with all of my videos, as well as live streams. We do live streams on severe weather events, or at least most severe weather events. But we 100% do them for enhanced risks, as long as they have a 5% chance for tornadoes. If they have a 2% chance, it's a toss up with the coin. So we'll have to see about that. But for stuff like this, we will do live streams, and we will continue to monitor this heavily. So that's something to keep in mind with that. Yeah, share this with friends and family on social media, because this is a serious event. I do not want anyone to be seriously impacted. So it would be greatly appreciated if people actually took this seriously. And then if you want to join our Discord server, that'll be oh my god, I can't speak. It's the end of the video. That'll be in the link in the description down below for Twist of Fate. So that's going to be it. My name is Nate. I also go by Hockey Boy Nate. I will catch you guys tomorrow. Peace.